Hello, I'm Sharon Lippincott, and I'd like to welcome you to the second in a series of interviews with British author Ian Mathie. Greetings, Ian. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. It's nice to see you.
Yes, it's always a pleasure. Well, today we're going to be discussing Ian's second book, Man in a Mud Hut. This is the second in his series of African memoirs. These volumes are based on his experiences working as a water engineer in more than a dozen African countries during the 1970s. Ian grew up in Africa, so he felt at home living in native villages where his projects were located. This episode in this book takes place in, Ian, you're going to have to tell us how to say this, Anahugwe?
Anahiguya.
Anahiguya. I guess you have to be there. Anyway, that's the same village in what was then Zaire that he described in his first book, Bride Price.
No, it's not. This is in what was Upper Volta.
Oh.
Anahiguya is West Africa. Bride Price was in Central Africa. And
that's interesting. Even after reading the book, I was confused about that.
Well, you have to look at the maps in the front. I did actually put some maps in the front of the book to help those who need a little bit of geography. I think there are some here. Yes, there are. There's a map of Upper Volta there at the top, and it shows you a little bit more underneath of West Africa.
Good. Okay, well, in this volume, you describe the visit of Desmond, a colleague from London, and you tell us about the culture shock he experienced when he was thrown headlong into what seemed to him to be a completely savage situation. So you describe this Desmond character as a ferret. What was his actual job?
He was an information analyst, basically. A picker-up of unconsidered trifles, putting them together like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle and trying to make sense out of them. And he worked in our base office back in London and coordinated all sorts of different bits of streams of information coming in, and tried to make sense of reports coming in from field officers like myself about all sorts of different projects, quite a wide variety of different things. And he was one who would, if he saw anything anomalous, chase it down and find out exactly what was going on, or try to. On this occasion, he found something that he couldn't explain, and when he took it further up the line, they said, well, you'd better go and have a look.
So
not realizing that Desmond had never been further afield from his home in Surbiton and central London than Calais, where he went once.
So that's why they sent him, a total newbie, out into the wilds, because they didn't know better.
Well, that's why they sent him to me, because they thought I would give him an introduction to Africa, albeit it had to be a very brief one. But he was a very good hunter of facts and very good at his job, at piecing together fragmented information and making sense of it. And they thought he would be very good at investigating why a project that appeared to be going wrong had gone wrong, and helping us identify what needed to be done to get it back on track.
Okay. Well, now, as you have already said, he suffered a lot from culture shock when he arrived from suburban London and found you living in a mud hut with no running water and no electricity and no flushing drainage and telephones 40 away. And then it got worse. How did he get over this and recover from the illness he picked up in Nigeria?
Well, it was quite a long and tortuous trail that he did. I mean, the initial shock of being picked up by this bloke who he'd met once, very briefly, and piled into a light aeroplane and flown 2.5 hours east over this barren country, where he knew not where he was going, and then find I'm circling this little mud hut village and say, that's home. It's going to give anybody culture shock. And then, of course, finding that there wasn't such a thing as a cold beer and a cup of tea, as he would recognise it in central London or Surbiton, that really was quite a lot. going around the village, meeting some of my neighbours and friends there, and then being faced with the village witch doctor was just a bit too much, and it blew a few fuses. Desmond then found we had an embargo put on us for flying, quite rightly, by the village witch doctor, and it saved us from a little embarrassment when a storm came through, which we would have been flying in the middle of otherwise. So I wasn't able to take him on to connect to his ongoing flight, and in the end I had to fly him to Nigeria myself. He encountered things there that were more than he expected. Quite apart from discovering things in the project, which was what the purpose of why he was there, he also stumbled across some rather nasty black African magic or African black magic.
They'll have to read the book to find out about that. It's pretty amazing. And
got afflicted by that. And when I brought him back to the village, he'd also picked up a tropical fever. Well, he wasn't in a fit state to be taken any further, and I couldn't get him to a proper Western doctor, so I had to hand him over to the village witch doctor to look after him.
Right.
How he recovered from the culture shock was a slow process, but basically by getting involved with our villagers, joining in a well restoration project in the village, and becoming part of the community for a few weeks.
How long was he there in total?
He was with me about 8.5 weeks in total. So,
that's a very long time.
Well, it was quite a good time. I mean, he was only supposed to be out in Africa for about 10 days.
All right.
He was supposed to come, spend 3 or 4 days with me, go on to Nigeria, spend a week there, and fly home from there.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
so at least at that time, you really couldn't count on how long you would be staying in these wilderness areas.
Well, you stay. Well, I had work to do, so I was staying anyway. He just had to stay with me until he was fit to get him out and send him home.
Did he suffer any after effects when he got home from all of this?
Not that he told me about in any detail. I think he had got over the point of having nightmares about it, but he maintained quite a vigorous interest in what was going on, both in the village where I lived and in some of the other projects that I'd shown him, because I took him around and showed him 1 or 2 other development projects, as well as the thing he'd been involved with.
Right.
And he was always keen to know quite a lot more about what was going on than was strictly necessary. And it was he who
invested.
Yeah, it was he who came up with the title for the book, actually. Not that I was planning to write a book or anything like that, but from then on, he always addressed me as the man in the mud hut.
Ah, interesting. Well, in the book, moving on to a slightly different topic, you talk about several festivals and describe them in some detail. How important are these festivals in the social calendar?
Oh, they're landmarks. They're very important. It's a seasonal existence. They're subsistence farmers where I was, and everything is done according to seasonal rotation, planting time, harvesting time, and so on. And that is mediated by the rainy season and the dry season. There are 2 rainy seasons, 1 long rain season, 1 short rainy season in the winter. And, so obviously the agricultural cycles become quite prominent. Along with that, there are certain landmarks when particular spiritual festivals become involved. And they have, a bit like we have public holidays scattered through the year, they have their kind of festivals scattered through the year. And it brings a bit of variety to life. It gives high points of interest and points to ignore the daily grind and look forward to.
Well, that sounds good.
And a great opportunity to have a party. Or in the case of our villages, a bicycle race.
Yes. Well, we could go on talking for a week here about the book. I loved it. I love all of your books. But let's show people your website where they can learn more about it. And let me switch over to that so they can find out more about the book and where to buy it.
Yeah.
So
I'm just
we've
giving my
got your
website a bit of a revamp.
Yes, here's your website, and here's the Man in a Mud Hut book.
Yep.
Nonfiction, illustrated with photographs. Some of it is so fantastic, I'm sure a lot of people might think it was fiction, but all of these things actually happened to you, right?
Oh, yes, yes. And I have recorded all these various things in my notebooks. Even quite a lot of conversations were recorded verbatim at the time, because I write a rather peculiar form of shorthand, but it works. And when I had interesting discussions, I often noted those down as they were done. And of course that means I can add a little bit more into the book and hopefully bring the events to life in a way that is often quite difficult with memoir writing.
Good, yes. Well, also, people can get your book anywhere from Amazon. And it's also available in Smashwords, which I don't have up here on the screen, but if you have a device that doesn't read Kindle files, you can get it from smashwords.com. We'll have the link on the YouTube site. So.
And as you see, it's available in print for those who want a print copy.
Absolutely, both versions, print, electronic, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank you for visiting with us again today, Ian. It was my pleasure to host you, and I look forward to getting together again.
Thank you very much. It's been very nice talking to you.
Okay, well, bye now.
Okay, goodbye.